We're going to be going over how we can create a responsive form. And responsive forms have specific considerations that we'll want to think about when we're developing the form so that they work optimally on the mobile devices. Of course, because we want to be developing with mobile first, we should go ahead and look at the mobile version of the form, and then we'll compare it to a larger screen version of the form. This is what the final form is going to look like, and you can see that it just has some basic form field elements. I have some placeholder text to help the user know what sort of information I want them to enter inside of the form fields. And if I hover over, you can see that I have a little tooltip that pops up. We'll go ahead and we will provide a checkbox that's going to be automatically checked when the user comes to the page. We'll have a drop-down menu so that the user can specify how they heard about our particular company, and then we'll add some radio buttons and a comment field. And then of course we're going to make a send button, and when they click send, we'll have some fields that are going to be required. You can easily do this using HTML5, and so when we code up our form, we'll make sure that we code it this way. Some other things that you can't see as I capture this on my desktop are the fact that we're going to code our form elements so that in certain fields, for instance the email field and the website field, we're going to want the keyboard on our mobile device to display a specific keypad that's going to make it easier for the user to enter that information. So when the user enters an email address, it's nice to display the @ symbol. When the user enters a web address, it's nice to automatically display the extension for the URL, like the .com, and have that accessible without them having to click and go to an alternate keypad. And those things are easy to incorporate into form development as we build with HTML5. So as I demonstrate this, I'm going to show you how to do this. The starting file that we're going to be working from is just going to be the Contact Us page, and I've just placed some text on the page. The page does not contain any form elements, so we'll be creating the form elements together through the next several videos. Before we get started, I just wanted to point out that when you build a form for mobile devices, you want to make sure that when you display the information, it's going to display optimally on a more narrow screen. You can see here that I have the labels of my form elements stacked on top of the form fields. If I go ahead and make my browser window wider, eventually the form is going to transform so that these elements are going to display side by side. For a wider screen, it makes more sense to have these display side by side. But on a narrow screen, this would take up far too much real estate. So as we style our form, we'll make sure that we incorporate these sorts of design changes so that our form is going to function better in the type of window that the user is going to be viewing it in. A couple of other things that you want to think about when you're developing forms are when you develop forms for smaller screens, you want to make sure that you're thinking about the fact that the screen is going to be primarily touch enabled. So when you lay out the form designs for those smaller screens, you want to make sure that the form elements have enough distance from each other to discourage the user from accidentally focusing on the wrong element. And just as when we make buttons, we want to make sure that the height of the elements are big enough so that a finger can easily get into those elements and be able to switch and focus on different elements. Alright, without further ado, let's get started in building the form that will be coming up in the next exercise.